Hello and welcome to Triggered. Today we have a special guest. We have SEFDScience, or Jabril, and we're going to be talking about, well, science stuff in general, but more specifically, we're going to try and, as per suggestion by Will, we're going to talk about a little bit about what's triggering in science, specifically things that people don't like to talk about or things like that. And we're also going to talk about things like robots taking over, AI, all kinds of crazy shit. So before we get started, Jabril, why don't you give yourself a really quick introduction about what your channel is and what's it about?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jabril. I run the SCFD Science channel, and the channel is essentially just probing a bunch of different curiosities, learning about that topic, learning about the good and the bad. Very important to present all perspectives on the topic, and yeah.
Cool. So the first thing that I noticed about your channel was, like I said, we all watched a series of your videos together, and I was really interested in, say, for example, your Will was mentioning your cockroach video and how you did, cockroaches are kind of icky to people for the most part. You know, they consider them, a major pest, but at the same time, they almost have like superhero characteristics, and it's kind of strange about that. So, is there anything like else that you can immediately comes to mind that is like similar to that in science that is, particularly like AI, that's triggering, that's people don't like to talk about it. It's kind of uneasy when it comes to science. Is there anything that comes to mind like that? Anybody? Well, I'm
Uh,
sure you must have something.
I mean, yeah, so you've got like nuclear power, you've got genetic engineering, everyone's all afraid of GMO, right? For good reasons and sometimes irrational reasons. And then you've got, artificial intelligence. People are kind of creeped out by, oh, the robots taking over. Of course not.
What about, let's go
Yeah.
with AI for starters. What about AI? I mean, like, okay. So does anyone think, or specifically Jabril, do you think say for example, the singularity, is that coming, and how soon, if so?
Singularity, I believe it's inevitable. There's no way that we can avoid singularity. The real question is how long will it take for singularity to get here?
Hmm.
And from the research that I've done, we have still quite a ways away, only for the fact that we don't have the proper processing power for computers to be able to match a human brain.
Right.
If you take in consideration just basic mathematical algorithms, like the Minimax algorithm, for example, uh, a computer in our day and age can't process all the outcomes of a chess match. A human brain can't do it either. But in order for us to create AI that could be able to match human brain, it would need to at least be able to have the processing power to do something like that.
Right.
So yeah, there's so much on it. They say that, what is it? I think it's 256. What is it? Ah, shucks, I'm drawing a blank. But they're saying that at the current processing power that we're at is kind of limiting. They can't find anything beyond that.
Mm.
So it's interesting, man. It's very interesting.
It's interesting. I think that if you look at like the way computers have evolved, if you look at quantum computers, which is the most advanced computers they have these days, they look very similar to old style computers from the 1960s and even the 1940s. Like they fill up rooms. You know what
I
I
have a
mean? Like,
question. Are you familiar with the quantum computer that they're playing around with? Because there's actually some speculation that it doesn't actually work.
hmm,
Yes, that's one of the biggest headlines with at the moment. They haven't really figured out how to make it work how our current processors work. The reason why it's a big deal, from what I've heard, is that it can compute everything at once
yeah.
versus the way that we compute stuff. It's like it goes through an array. It goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Start over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The quantum processors can process everything at once, but they're still figuring out how they can apply it to. It gets really technical. I don't know that much, but I know that there is issues, as you mentioned.
What about like say something like Skynet? Because I mean, like it's science fiction, but I mean it's not completely or even really that improbable that something like that would happen. That um, i- first of all, that we would use say technology to automate missile defense or something similar to that, and that if we were to do that, you go far enough down that line, do you eventually have an AI keep track of it? Because it's a big fucking, it's an enormous network, right? So do you have an AI keep track of it? And if so, what happens when that AI becomes sentient? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's completely improbable that we could have a Terminator-esque scenario go down. I don't think it would be. I think it would be a lot less, obviously, the violent, gun warfare. I doubt is
So
obviously
on
gonna
our
happen.
on our
Actually, what would need to happen is you'd have to go into Tron mode. So you need to shrink people down and then put them with guns inside the computer to fight the computer within the computer. Fight them on our home turf. We're gonna lose. We need to take the war first to the digital world.
Yeah, but man,
don't
like
we
that
first need to
Ant-Man,
find the one?
that like Ant-Man shit is
No,
impossible.
it's like Tron, man. Just Tron in there, man.
You know, that should be a crossover. You know how there's like Alien v Predator? There needs to be Neo in Tron.
That would be pretty cool. Or just have fucking what's Jeff Bridges in fucking Matrix. That would be great.
Maybe
Oh
you
my
can
goodness.
start some.
How dare you go there?
Maybe the programs that are being used by the AI are dissatisfied with our working conditions, and we can ferment a revolution within the artificial intelligence computer.
Have any of you
Well, I have a
guys ever
question.
watched?
What about? I have a question. Wait, you threw out some date there, and that was talking about AI. Is that talking about like human intelligence AI, or are we talking like what about something that is sort of halfway, like some other animal?
Like a cyborg or a synth or something?
No. Like
Well, I mean, there's
like
also
like the AI of say.
there are
chimp or
three
something.
different classes of artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
There's-
smart, dumb, and something else,
Well,
isn't it?
no, I mean, okay, so there's just actually just a program that looks like an AI, but it isn't. So that's like the chatbots that we're all
Yeah.
familiar with, and those are just if-then statements. Then you've got something like Watson, right? IBM's Watson, and that's more of an expert system. The distinction being that it is actually capable of learning and performing some pretty complex sort of estimations about what it's supposed to do.
Is
And,
Watson still the most advanced computer that we have?
Um, it's the best example of an expert system that I can think of.
It just
And
it's
then,
okay.
and then
Like,
there's an AI, and AI is pure science fiction right now.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, at this point it is. But like, what would you like, Jabril? Would you
Well,
say?
not necessarily even at this point. I mean, there's been a few mentions already of sentience, and that's not even a necessary component of an AI that outstrips humanity.
Oh no, it could do it without that.
No, it just needs to be aware of other things, or it needs to have the capacity to process information and then learn from it. It doesn't need to be self-aware.
Yeah. Well, specifically, how long do you guys think that like it'll be before something like smart AI becomes a reality? Like before we have AIs that are, or even like robots with AIs, or robot servants kind of a thing. How far off is that, you guys think?
Well, the real issue with that is defining smart AI. Because I mean, I can argue that we already have it. It all really depends on what you define as smart AI.
We
For
have
example,
AI in video games, man. I mean, they
for
exist.
example, like the Google self-driving car. Like I'd argue that's smart AI. It can drive itself. I believe it's really to what capacity are you trying to define smart AI?
I guess I would define it as an AI that can, like getting away from the singularity and more simply, an AI that can process new information, like Will said, and make independent decisions based on the information. Something like that.
Are you meaning like an Android type scenario?
Yeah, sort of. Like think like Terminators mixed with like Fallout 4, like basically human-like AI. Well,
Okay.
it doesn't even need to be human-like actually. It could just be the capacity of understanding that a human has. It basically has to be able to mirror the understanding and learning aspects of humans. So
Right.
yeah.
And see, I think that it's pretty far away, only for the reason that in order for any type of robot to have the sort of like self-awareness or be able to calculate the scenario around them, us humans have to figure out the algorithms to implement that into the AI to be able to understand that. And what the CEO of Google self-driving car last year, he was asked the question about Tesla and the self-driving. I'm not sorry. The summon feature, I believe it was. And his comment on the Tesla summon feature, which the CEO of self-driving car, he is also working with, a self-driving car just as Elon is, right? And his comment to that was, well, that's not what our focus is on at the moment. We're focusing on this car being able to drive itself, being aware of what's around it, not being able to park itself and all this other stuff, which is very alarming, because what it lets you know is that in order for us to reach a completely sentient AI, it would require a lot of different companies doing a lot of different research to work together to create this one product, or the technology which have to become readily available as the years go on. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Wayne, were you going to say something?
Yeah, well, yeah, you've got a few things to consider. You've got quite a few people who are skeptical of this, including the chap who invented Moore's law. Well, he didn't come up with Moore's law; his friend did. But it was Moore himself who came up with the notion that computer speeds would increase twofold every 18 months or so. And he doesn't actually believe that the singularity is something we need to worry about. But in terms of scare, I think what people are afraid of is the kind of scenario where the artificial intelligence is capable of somehow improving itself, which would require it has access to some kind of manufacturing component. So we're probably talking that kind of technology isn't going to be widespread until we have nanobots that can reproduce themselves, which are being worked on.
That's a crazy idea, yeah.
Boeing is already using 3D printers to make aviation hardware. I mean, they're fabricating jet engine parts in 3D printers.
Yeah.
Out of titanium.
Right. So if it's got the ability to both control an aspect of, well, but hypothetically speaking, you've got a robot that is designed to move things from one place to another. We've seen those already are being manufactured for warehouses. You've got robots that are designed to construct things in 3D printers, and you've got robots that live inside computers that basically tell stuff what to do.
I think you make a really interesting point with the nanobots, Wayne, because nanobots are basically, imagine if you had a robot that was essentially almost as small as a cell that could replicate the same way a cell could. At what point?
Okay, I mean, yeah, sure, that would be all kinds of spooky, but at the same time, it's unnecessary to get to the same place.
Yeah, it's not necessary, but
if there's a factory, for example, a fully automated factory, and let's say this thing is the size of a football stadium. Okay, it's not small. The entire thing could be automated. It could produce all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, what's necessary is that there is a single purpose, a single mind controlling if you like, the upgrade procedure. It needs to be designing upgrades for itself. It needs to be controlling the resources that enable it to upgrade itself. It needs to have access to those things.
It may not even be aware, though. So, you were talking a bit, to a certain extent, about ants in one of your videos, right? Where you're talking about how ants self-organize through their descent. And one of the things that's fascinating with that is ants produce these complex responses that seem intelligent. These sort of sneaker net neural networks.
Hive mind.
Well, right, but it's a hive mind made out of ants following each other. It's other ants, and basically processing things out by walking. I mean, an ant mind processes by walking.
I don't know if this is the same process. Sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
This isn't the kind of thing that's going to happen by accident, or if it's going to happen by accident, it's going to be because somebody done fucked up trying to do something clever, like design some kind of evolution program.
Why would you have to fuck up to say that you have a system that designs itself? Well,
no, because at the moment, obviously, we're talking about machines which we design and program to serve us, not themselves. Now, it's possible you might design something specifically to, I don't know, to self-repair. Because that would be something that would obviously be really valuable. Let's say we're talking about long-distance space journeys. You're going to want to have some way of cutting out the dangers that are inherent with trying to repair with engineers, or having to train on a really small space flight, having to like retrain a bunch of new engineers to do manual labors that a robot could do, and a self-replicating robot at that. And that's the kind of thing that I mean. It might be something like that getting out of control because of a mistake in programming, or because of an AI understanding an instruction that's being given to it as part of its coding, and reinterpreting it in a way that wasn't expected.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the whole AI thing, I think it's like Jabril said. It's probably farther off than we really do think it is. It's probably not as, I mean, because like you said, you know, we don't really have the processing power at the moment, and it's conceivable in the future, but at this point, I think that I don't know, we don't have much to worry about.
We don't have the concentrated processing power, but that will change very, very quickly over
When it comes
time.
to
I mean,
when it comes to processors, we've kind of hit a wall for a while. I mean, they either get too hot or require too much electricity,
or they get too small, and you can't make any
That's
smaller.
why all supercomputers are made out of clusters of processors. It's not one processor.
Right, like rendering farms and whatnot.
Yeah, or any supercomputer since anytime. I mean, like to look at all the old Cray supercomputers, right? It wasn't one processor; it was a whole bunch of them. And you know, like the more modern supercomputers, they literally are grabbing off-the-shelf consumer PC parts and just networking them all together.
Yeah, there was one Air Force or Army. I don't know what the best.
You talking about the PlayStation?
Yeah, the PlayStations.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, they networked a bunch of PlayStations together for a cheap supercomputer.
I
That's
remember
awesome.
that. Was
They
great.
installed Linux on a bunch of PlayStations and networked them all together and made a DIY
Yeah, so
supercomputer. Yeah.
So a supercomputer would have like just thousands of fucking processors, or not thousands, but a lot.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean that's not unlike our
No,
brain,
yeah.
right? We've got a bunch of individual neurons are retarded. So.
Oh yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go to a little bit of a different subject. So I was looking at your
Let's
video.
self-direct. Let's let him self-direct. So we threw one out there. What do you think scares people about science, Jabril?
Oh, you know, I think all science, to be honest, man.
Really?
Yeah, you know, it all depends who you ask. Because one thing that I'm coming to realization is that people are afraid of change, and the older they get, the more afraid of change they get, and this seems to be natural. And as interesting as it is, I've done self-reflection on myself, and it's even true to parts of me. You know, there's some parts of me that like I don't like the change. For example, music. I don't like the change that music is going through, but if you dig deeper into the research, it's kind of like a natural human process. And so what I've been working on recently is just to relinquish that fear of change, you know, to try and make myself a better person. But I believe that aspect alone that's social science. You know, that's a branch of social science. I'm sorry if I went off track a little bit there, but
No. But okay, no. I mean, I would agree that, but that's why it's interesting. So, is there a particular thing that you find interesting, or you wanted to talk about, or do you want us to just keep like randomly riffing on these things, or do you think that the topic is itself not interesting? No, I mean, like no. If you're not, no, sure, no. I'm not being a cunt here, okay? If
No,
and I can say that it's YouTube. I can use that word, haha. But no, but seriously, if you think that look, we've got all fucking 5 views here. So if anything you're talking, the point here is for us to have a good time. Okay?
right.
So if this is like a boring conversation, then we can talk about, I don't know, your fucking cat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly, it
we
doesn't
can
matter.
literally talk about anything.
Yeah. Like so that was a topic I proposed, and no one is, you know, fucking blood bonded to it. So if you wanted to change it to something else, go for it.
I'm actually okay with that topic, to be honest. But the thing that I want to point out, and I think this is probably central to a lot of anti-science fear, most of it comes from reporting of science and not the actual science itself. And
That's a
that's
good point. Yeah,
really,
there's a lot of there's a big difference between what the science says, and I've noticed this more recently as I've finally gotten access to actual academic papers. There's a huge difference between what the science actually says and what specifically the media reports on the science saying, and misinterpretations of the data by people who agree with the science and disagree with the science. You know.
I'll give you an example of scientific reporting. According to certain sources, 97% of all scientists agree that the climate change over the last 100 years is mostly due to human beings. That's clearly, factually, complete nonsense.
Yeah,
Well-
there's an even better acid test for scientific news articles. If it has Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye the Science Guy in the title, just drop it. Or even better,
When it
assume
comes-
the opposite.
I think you guys are being
They're not inaccurate in all time. They do sensationalize things.
Yeah, I don't think
Exactly.
Science
There's certainly a lot of hyperbole with some of those things.
I think people are scared of. Okay, so scientific inquiry doesn't really have barriers. I mean, it does have barriers, which we put on it. But I mean, if you look at, for example, Unit 731, which is a Japanese human experiment scientific operation in which they force people to have sex with each other and like let them have syphilis, kind of similar to what the Americans did with the
Yeah.
Tuskegee, right? And obviously, I mean, it's not. Well, I mean, it isn't necessarily a bad form of scientific inquiry. I mean, it's simply, you know, it isn't anti. Well, I mean,
Things
to
that
this
are
guy just-
immoral are not necessarily anti-scientific.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's still immoral though. You shouldn't, and it probably shouldn't be conducted
Well,
for the sake
fine,
of
but I
furthering
mean-
science.
Right.
Well, you say that, but that's not
Still
a scientific
valid
position.
scientific inquiry. Yeah, it's still
It's not
valid
scientific
scientific
position.
inquiry.
Okay, but valid scientific inquiry does not equal we should do it. Therefore,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just pointing out
and that's
that.
that's what my point is. That's all. I'm
No
saying.
one's arguing with it.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. I'm just saying it's. I mean, I think there's obviously fear of that.
Well, I mean,
We don't have any.
Science is amoral.
We don't have any secret backers of Unit 731 here.
and Wayne, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna let this slip because I didn't want to have this argument right now, but I guess you want to. Could you please provide a counter statistic to that 97% without just saying that it's false?
Yeah, I've actually looked at a few tables. In meteorologists alone, I think it's 52% believe that it's mostly human beings that have contributed to it, and the rest either believe that it's a combination of both nature and human beings, or mostly nature.
This statistic was widely panned for valid statistical flaws that it made. There was also a second one that was made by another scientist, and he was trying to do it, but there was also some problems with sample size and the methodology of the filtration process.
Okay,
Well,
but Wayne, you just claimed that
actually-
it was actually that the actual truth is that scientists actually secretly believe that it's all natural and that it's normal, and that's not.
No.
Wayne said that 52%. Blah 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 blah.
And then he said the majority believe it's mostly a mix of.
Let me break it down for you.
Okay.
52% believe that it is predominantly human beings that are responsible. The other 48% fall into categories such as 20% believe that there's insufficient evidence. Those guys are probably the most accurate, to be honest with you. I don't think there is a unified theory of climate change yet. And the rest fall more into the realms of it's probably a bit of both, down to we think it's mostly natural. There certainly isn't a consensus here, and this was just meteorologists. And this is the original source that I found, because I got into this argument some months ago, and I tracked this back to the original source, which it seemed to be a newsletter of somebody had published some research data. and the actual figure was based on publishing meteorologists. It was 97% of actively publishing meteorologists, which made up something like 1% of all meteorologists.
Meteorologists study the meteorologists study the weather and not the climate.
Eric,
Well, they study both.
Eric,
But they're specific. They don't study the climate. That's not their main job.
Yeah, Eric. Okay, so I've actually looked at the statistics on it, and the problem is there's a methodology problem in that what they tend to do with the statistics, with this particular statistic, is that they have a multi-stage filtration process to whether your statistic is counted in the final tally. Mm-hmm. And effectively, it is fallacious because the way that it's set up is that if you don't answer yes initially, you don't get calculated in the final thing.
Okay, my only problem with any of this is that are you coming to the conclusion that we should just continue to burn non-discriminately all the fossil fuels?
No.
That's
science.
That's my only concern.
No, that's not a science question.
No, but that's my only concern. Are you concerned with? No, it is a science question. It is concerned with the environment and whether or not we go to fucking China and tell me that you can just burn as much fuel as you want.
Let me answer your question. What you're doing there is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about how people are scared of science and scared by what science reporting does, because you're automatically jumping to a conclusion that runs counter to the popular narrative.
Okay, so Wayne,
if you're not
yes,
for this,
we should. Yes, we should.
Let me answer the question. Instead of putting words in my mouth, let me answer the question. What's happening in your head as you're doing the in-group, out-group thing, where you're going, well, if you're not in the, oh my God,
are you going to answer the question, or are you going to continue to analyze it?
I'm going to answer the way I choose to, thank you.
Okay.
What you're doing is you're saying, okay, if you're not in the climate change is real and oh my God, we have to fucking save the children.
No, I asked you the only question I asked. No, the only question I asked you is whether or not we should continue to.
I still haven't answered the question.
Discriminately.
If you're not in that, you must be in the extreme opposite camp.
No, I don't care how much you buy the entire premise wholesale. I only care if you are going to say that if it's whatever your position is on the subject. Therefore,
well, if you're not going to ask an honest question, then you're not going to get an honest answer.
Question. If you're not going to get a fucking answer at all, then fuck you.
How fucking triggering shit is? I love it. This is great.
Awesome.
Let me give you my honest answer instead of interrupting me then.
Everyone's furious. I love it.
You haven't gotten a single answer.
This is not a dichotomy. This is not a black and white issue.
Okay, listen to me. Listen to me. No, listen to me. Okay, what is a black and white issue is whether or not these fuels are damaging to the environment. Yes or no?
We don't know.
Okay, no. That's not what I asked you. Is it a black and white issue? Yes or no issue as to whether or not it is damaging or not. It is either one or the other. Yes or no.
We don't know.
No, it is yes.
We don't know.
Yes.
We don't know.
We're going to judge the damage.
Wait.
Because
Oh, God.
what about the floral growth or whatever other variety of variables we could judge the good or bad effect on the environment?
How's our guest enjoying this conversation?
Yeah.
You're just probably sitting here listening to this Jerry Springer show and just like, oh my God.
Yeah, I wish I knew enough to pitch in. I honestly stay away from global change. It's too much of a headache for me.
I do know if we want to burn some fossil fuels indiscriminately, I can go to the face of some type of hill and then get a pickaxe and just get out some coal and then light it on fire.
Okay, so again, the point is there should and what it comes down to is should you allow mass burning of fossil fuels? I don't care what you think about the question. Answer the fucking question.
And I've told you, we don't know the answer to the question you're asking.
Okay, so
I mean, Eric,
so if we look at country like say China, where they're ridiculously they have almost no regulations on factories doing this kind of stuff, and they have horrible air quality.
Yeah, it's not CO2 that's causing it.
Oh my fucking God!
No, Eric. Actually, I'm sorry. Correct, Eric. It's actually the other byproducts in the coal.
sulfur.
Okay, but that still means we shouldn't burn coal. I'm not talking about CO2.
No, it means if you filter the coal, most of that comes out.
Systems in these coal burning facilities that aren't China.
Sorry, what, Pat?
China's not a good example, Eric.
Yes, it is.
People burn
Well, you
coal
say that, but you're not
places
listening
that
to why
aren't
it's a bad
China.
example.
Oh my God.
And
No,
people
Eric,
burn
you don't get to
steel
say, oh
mills
my
in
God, and then you don't
places
listen to what
that
anybody
aren't
has to say.
You're talking over each other. I didn't hear anything that Pat said.
Okay, fine. Well, you know.
Well, okay. So one of the
So again,
China's-
there are people that don't live in China that live next to coal-fired power plants or steel mills. or
Okay,
whatever else.
then go do that, Pat. I implore you to go live next to one.
Dude, oh my God! My dad's hometown is in a fucking steel mill. I could throw a rock and hit the fucking steel mill.
So,
dude.
Pat, are you seriously going to argue that steel mills don't do any damage to the air quality?
No,
Are you fucking
no,
me?
no. See,
Eric, whenever you
You
breathe
said
out,
that
you're
stuff
exhaling
like
CO2.
you were putting a umbrella, which is Chinese evil burning plants, and why should we have evil, horrible pollution burning plants like China? And
No.
I said, through my own personal experience, and hundreds of thousands and millions of other people live very close to coal burning power plants and or steel mills.
In the same, with the same regulations that China has in the same volume, really?
No one
China.
has the same regulations
We're not
with
China.
China as China.
Right, so then my point stands because China
Your
is
point stands
worse.
only in China.
Oh my God.
You've created this, this tautology where you're going to just be right. You self-define a situation that's bad, and then you ask, is it bad? Well, yes. Everyone would agree that China has a terrible environmental situation.
Yes, but you guys are essentially saying that there should be absolutely no caps on
No,
what
that's
we
a false
burn.
dichotomy.
No,
Wayne was pointing out that you're making, and you refuse to listen to anybody correcting you on it.
Oh my God.
No.
I gave an example.
Dennis, you don't get to say, oh my God. You're the one who's putting out the false dichotomy. Oh my God, to you.
What's the false dichotomy? Which false dichotomy are we talking about? now?
That it is either complete Chinese deregulation or
No, no.
That is
Shut
exactly
up.
the
That's
dichotomy.
not
Okay,
what the
fine.
fuck I'm saying.
Then-
Don't put fucking words in my mouth. Now, let me rephrase. Okay, so we are either. It is true. It is a matter of fact that either the coals and all these fossil fuels that we are burning are either harming the environment or not harming the environment.
Okay, so would you say that fat is good or bad for the human body?
If we are harming the air quality, and the answer is yes,
fat
it
good?
is bad.
Yes or no? Is fat good or bad for the human body?
If it's harming the air quality, yes.
In your body.
What?
Is fat, if you ingest fat into your body, is it good or bad for your body?
That is, it's.
Okay, see, suddenly it's not a yes or no question. That's my point. It's a false dichotomy.
But not everything is a yes or no question.
That's my point.
This is a matter of a yes or no question.
No, you are making it a yes or no question.
No, because it is. If it is either doing some small amount of harm and therefore it is doing some harm and therefore the answer is yes,
Okay,
or it is
well,
doing
I
no,
can say the
or
same
it is
thing about
doing no
that.
harm, then and the answer is no.
I can say
How
the
is
same
that
thing
false?
about
What if it's good?
Okay, then the answer is
turns out
no. Then the
later
answer is
that
no.
the
No,
Then the
it's
answer
not.
is no.
No, it isn't, because look. Okay, so are you familiar with the statement that all things are good in moderation?
Yes, but that's not always true.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not, Will.
Absolutely. Name one thing that isn't good in moderation.
Or lead.
Nuclear fire, lead.
Yeah, sure. And the amount of lead, if I reduce that below a certain amount, it doesn't matter. It's not bad.
Okay, so
But it's not good either.
Oh, so what you're saying, Will, is just drink the fluoride. Oh, okay.
but my original point and the only question I had was, should we have regulations on how much fossil fuels are allowed to be burned? Yes or
I
no?
think we absolutely need to have regulation on the manner in which fossil fuels are burned. As to the quantity of which are burned, I think that is a more complicated question, and that it involves multiple different calculations you have to make. So
Yeah,
the main issue with
the kind of regulations that we have in existence in the Western world are honestly the best we're going to get, and they're perfectly fine. Some of the byproducts of the manufacturing process are super important. It's one of our main sources, for example, of mercury.
I mean, I can't tell you how many hipster douchebags that live in metropolitan cities that will sit there and go, oh yeah, all this power is terrible, only, you know, the entire logistical system that makes their city even possible it requires that all these things be in place.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, I'm sure you have my back. We'd love to replace the whole infrastructure with nuclear if we could.
So I mean,
that's actually a good point.
That's another triggering technology.
I
mentioned it.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention regulations on fuel because I had to work in a fuel checking quality testing facility.
Okay, go ahead.
For example, diesel, right? Diesel for a long time there was zero regulations on the amount of sulfur in it, and this dramatically changed after there was some correlation to be found with high amounts of sulfur in the air and acid rain, for example. And you know, and these natural sort of regulations, which, you know, I mean, so I think it used to be you used to have like 6,000 milligrams, and now it's about 30 milligrams. So yeah, I mean, I think I have no problem with regulating like the amounts of I don't know, small components in fuels. I think it's a reasonable thing to do. But anyway, yeah, it's just when it comes to diesel. And like, I mean, we obviously some of the other things, like Wayne pointed out, is very important for us to get small components out, which we out of the fuels. But anyway, sorry.
Something that a lot of people don't understand is that an enormous amount of our chemical industry is based on the byproducts from the fossil fuel industry. So plastics, perfumes, pesticides, fertilizers. I mean, the supply chain and the way in which all these, and obviously, you know, if you stop burning fossil fuels, the chemical industry will probably find other byproducts to use. But currently, what they tend to like to use, because they're super cheap, are byproducts from the fuel process.
So I just want to, I feel like we've, particularly me, have been incredibly rude in discluding Jabril from this conversation and going on a crazy Jerry Springer tangent.
No, I asked him. He was like, no, I don't want to get involved in this shit.
This is too much Jerry Springer for me, man.
Yeah, let's go back to, say, for example, the nuclear power thing. So, like, I remember watching a documentary on nuclear power not long ago, and, you know, if you say, you look at, you chart up the differences between how much damage is being done by each different amount of power, or sorry, not damage, but the relative safety of each source of power and the methods used to produce it. Nuclear is like the very bottom. I mean, like, people are like, oh, you know, meltdowns, it's such a big problem, but that it's such a, like, it's sort of, you know, when there is danger, it's bad for nuclear power, sure.
Well,
but
meltdown has also never happened. Even Chernobyl didn't meltdown.
The chance of meltdown is slim to none, and every time we've had a nuclear problem, it's been human error, every single time.
Well, I mean,
that's a good question actually to ask Jabril. What is your take on nuclear power, and do you think we should build more factories?
You know, I'm going to begin by saying I don't know too much about nuclear. Of course, I know all the famous accidents that happened throughout history. I do know that it can be very potentially dangerous, though we don't have too many examples of that throughout history. I live in San Diego, so we have a plant not too far north that they actually shut down, I think a couple years ago. And they said something crazy like it's going to take, like, I think 50 years or something crazy like that before they can actually, like, legitimately shut down the factory, because it just takes a long time to cool down. But beyond that, there's no issues. Like, you can drive by it within 100 feet and, like, you have no effects, at least that I know of. And another very interesting thing is that the naval ships here in San Diego are also powered by nuclear energy, which is very interesting, because when they come into port and they dock, they actually, because the nuclear energy is always running, so what they do is they transfer that energy into the San Diego power grid, and they
that's
actually,
cool.
they actually power the city with the like the aircraft carrier nuclear engines. So like that's a beautiful benefit, you know.
Yeah, for those who don't know, so like nuclear power, like when people see like the smoke coming out of the towers, for example, that is water vapor. That's it. Because the way it works is you take radioactive isotopes and you basically dip them into a watertight container, and that cools them down, which produces steam, which goes to a turbine, and that's what you see coming out of the thing. So it's like like we said, you know, the only danger that's in nuclear power is when people don't handle it properly and they allow the system to basically not run the way it's supposed to and allow it to they don't do the right checks and balances.
Like a nuclear, like a disaster could cause issues.
Right, but another
there's widespread fear that was largely the result of propaganda after there were quite a few, obviously, you know, quite well-known disasters, which turned people off nuclear. And the reality is that we've improved the process so much now that modern nuclear power plants are so safe that you would literally have to fly every day of your life to have equal a chance to you would literally have more chance of falling out of an aeroplane that was fucking landed and dying because you broke your head than a nuclear meltdown would occur. That's how fucking infrequent they are.
Yeah, there are several fail-safe reactor designs.
Multiple, and even if there is any kind of problem, they're designed to fail.
I think
actually,
maybe
Wayne, the amount of people that have died falling out of planes that are already landed
On the wrong way. It's probably actually quite high.
Since females have been allowed to be pilots.
Oh,
Wow.
So one thing you also have with
You went there.
which we shouldn't hush away from is it's the waste that is left behind, which you tend to have to keep storage for some time.
You do have to dispose of the waste, but
and I visited multiple nuclear storage facilities, and they have to keep expanding their.
I'm sorry, but I have thought of a solution to this long ago, and nobody wants to listen to me. Cannon that shoots them into the sun.
I was going to say, is it the Superman 4 solution?
No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that because actually the byproducts from the reactors can be reused in other reactions. You want to save them.
Okay, well then all the shit that we can't reuse, launch it into the sun.
You can't use.
Go ahead. Real wants to say something. You're good.
As ideal that is for like disposing even like our simple like trash dumps, that is unrealistic at the time because even to resupply the ISS costs millions and millions, if not billions of dollars to do. The atmosphere is honestly our greatest enemy at the moment as far as like.
I assume that Eric was kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
you gotta keep in mind a lot of things we say are tongue well in cheek.
Okay. I apologize.
Yeah.
What about digging a hole and throwing it all the way to the center?
That would work too. Throw it into the core. That would work too.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
What?
So we've been kind of going all over.
I care about the Earth so much, guys. Let's put radioactive material in the Earth's core.
I see nothing wrong with that. Okay?
That would be awesome.
I see nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, but it might be hollow, so it would be dinosaurs.
Oh shit!
Oh, exactly.
Shit.
You start digging down, and it's Sarah Palin riding a Tyrannosaurus. You guys see the trailer for the new Iron Sky movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those unfamiliar, there was one movie called Iron Sky, which was involved moon Nazis coming from the moon to attack the Earth, and
Sarah Palin killed them.
by Sarah Palin flying a spaceship that was, I guess, disguised as a module in the ISS, but was actually a secret U.S. project to build a star cruiser in space. And then, they battled the moon Nazis. And then in the second one, which is not out yet, they're going into the Hollow Earth. And in the Hollow Earth, there are Tyrannosaurus Rexes that people ride.
I think I've just filled out my triggered hangout bingo card. So do I win something?
Yes, you do.
You win a. Are you kidding me?
All the time.
It's yeah. When it comes to nuclear as well, it's the my city is primarily fueled by nuclear. I live in Antwerp, which is a huge port, and we have a few plants next to our city. But recently, there have been some problems, and they have to shut down some plants, mainly because the plants were actually built there by the Americans in the 50s and 60s.
As much as the nuclear thing is interesting, I think we've been talking too much about stuff that I think Jabril's more into the social sciences. So I think.
Oh, well, we're trying to avoid all that stuff. We're trying to be all sciencey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like
the mix.
No, man,
of
I don't mind at all. It's just I want to give everyone else a chance to speak. That's why.
Oh no, dude, this is about you. Fuck us.
Yeah.
We are so relevant.
No, are you kidding me? We go back and forth with each other all the time. Okay,
Yeah. Interrupt,
okay, buddy.
please.
I'm not letting you sidestep. You make the topic. Crickets happening now.
Okay, wait, but I did want to ask one more question about nuclear.
Sure.
If anyone out there knows, what are the because other than Fukushima, what other like accidents were there recently? Does anyone know?
Recently.
Well, obviously Chernobyl, Fukushima.
Well, that's a long time ago, but recently.
Oh, I thought you meant all like over time in general.
It was in New York or Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there was that one.
I mean, I
But-
suppose you could say my city had an accident because now it's going to be shut down for 3 months, but it wasn't like a nuclear accident. It was simply a stupid mechanical mistake made by humans. So,
3 Mile Island. That's what's called.
Interesting.
That's actually, I think, the only.
There was a minor blast in France.
right.
I think one person died or something.
Yeah.
But that was at a I think it was like a waste treatment plant or something for nuclear waste.
But we could transition that socially.
So I'm
because
looking at a list of them. It looks like total there's about 25.
Dating as far back as.
That's when it started. So 1945 is
Okay.
the first one. So
Interesting. Okay.
it counts Nagasaki and Hiroshima in that.
Yeah,
Actually.
one thing that interests me, I'm not
Apart from Chernobyl, very few deaths.
So Lenny.
Wait. Are they saying that Nagasaki and Hiroshima are accidents?
No. They're saying like it's listing all enormous amount of releases of radiation. So they just
Oh,
count
okay. Because it was a big,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Alright,
But yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to propose this question to the panel. What do you think is the or will be the ultimate energy source?
No.
It's definitely not going to be wind. I can say
Yeah,
that.
it won't be wind. That's for sure.
It won't be wind.
I think that probably. I think nuclear is probably a good possibility, but if I had to actually think about it, it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, maybe geothermal, something obscure that's really like untapped right now.
I mean, actually,
that's my guess. That's my guess.
I mean, actually, one of the things I saw, which was an article, which was they wanted to put self-replicating sun panels on the moon and to send energy back to Earth.
I strongly support this idea because they're going to do it with self-replicating little robots, and they're going. And the idea was to put these loads of solar panels on the moon, and then the moon, and then the
moon
energy
would look
be
like the Earth, dude.
transferred back to the Earth using a giant microwave beam.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, this is excellent. My killer robots,
I'm
it's going to be so, they'll just microwave the planet.
It's like a
I'm
Death
going
Star.
for a
It would be a Death
combination.
Star.
I'll go for a combination of that and black holes, possibly using super cold gas dwarfs as a thermal exhaust.
No.
As we learned from the Matrix, the most effective power source in the universe is the
Imagination.
bioelectric field of the human body.
yeah.
Actually,
And when I watched
wait a
that, I
minute.
was like, this
Hold
is
on.
easily the most scientific thing I've ever seen.
Go ahead, Alex,
About that, I wanted to ask about the Matrix, if the panel can indulge me.
Yep.
Why on earth did they use humans and not a bigger animal that is like a cow, which is more controllable?
Why use an animal at all?
I think it's because the
it was a stupid
executives told
MacGuffin.
them. The executives told them to just do something simple and stupid.
Do you want the
I'm not
actual
blaming the
answer?
executives
Why do they
on
have
no.
that?
Do you want the actual answer? Okay.
Yeah.
The reason is that if you wouldn't go to the cinema
Yeah.
to watch a movie about a bunch of
And I'm pretty sure the
running
cows
around
can
inside the Matrix.
I mean, the cows are too red.
Sorry, doing Kung Mu.
The cows are too red
guys,
pilled.
but you aren't all really thinking of the.
If it was a panda,
I would watch it if they had the cows like smart, like they just changed that aspect.
Oh my god. Genetically engineered, super intelligent cows.
if it was a panda, people might go and see that movie.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Or
the
penguin.
best energy source for the future is going to be.
Only if Morgan Freeman narrated it.
So thanks everybody for your ridiculously tongue-in-cheek answers. But let's
Well,
go
I
on
mean,
to
it's the
something else.
truth.
No,
Well,
no.
I have
Sound
an answer
energy.
to the question.
Ooh.
Go ahead. What a question.
Yeah, well, from my point of view, I think the future will probably be solar for settlements and nuclear for transport. And I think it will stop being called solar and will start being called star power or something like that.
Oh my
Well,
god.
I think that solar could be useful, but it's not put to the use that it could be. Like it's untapped in the sense that like you could power a building, say, by having the walls be partially solar paneled, for example.
I'm just saying that because I'm thinking like in the far future when we start having out of Earth colonies or exploration, and it will be obvious that there will be places in this galaxy, I guess, or the solar system that won't have that much solar power, so it will need to have some other
We're going to go
source.
there. I'm just
So
going to say
this is-
Dyson spheres.
This might be
Actually,
fierce,
even
yeah.
though it is pretty viable, the reason why star power isn't viable is because anyone who says they run something on star power just gets punched in the face.
Okay, so
I
this
think,
might
I
be a big question.
One at a time, guys. Let Lenny go.
Yeah, this might be a big question, but this is something I find very interesting. Is we have this sort of nice idea of progress about science, but would it be possible to actually hit a dead end somewhere in the future?
Well, actually, okay, we were talking about like back with the AI and the processors thing. Remember, like I'm pretty sure somebody mentioned the barrier. Now, if you don't know, it's actually like because I mean, obviously, the way that processors get more impressive is they get smaller, right? So, and yet they have more information in them. Sorry, what? Not
always. So, for example, are you familiar with the whole multi-core thing, where processors now they don't just have one? It's not a unicore, monocore processor. They're multi-core.
Yeah, sorry. The word I meant was transistor, not processor. But transistors get smaller and smaller, right? And
well, sure, yeah, but they're involving that. So now they're talking about optical computers.
Yeah.
I mean, look. The thing is, U.S. Patent Office said, I think in.
Well, wouldn't an optical computer still be a smaller transistor?
Sure, but it's a completely different technology.
But my point though was
a transistor. The concept of a transistor is more abstract, isn't it?
The point is that you can do the calculations without the limitations of the previous technology.
My only point was though that as we get smaller and smaller, and I'm pretty sure we've already hit this barrier at least partially, is that I mean you can't build things that are smaller than atoms, right? And if you start to have literally
well, that's when you start talking
size...
about quantum computing. So say
right.
if you start doing that, then you see you break through it again.
Well, the question is there something beyond the quantum level though? And if we build quantum computers, is that the level? Is that the final? Like I mean, what happens after that if we do reach
it's
that?
Bowser, boss. You can't beat him.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Well, I mean,
quantum
also,
computers
you're putting in artificial
size though.
So, for example, I could just make a computer larger, right? That'd be another way to make it more powerful.
What is more likely to limit us rather than the potential smallness of a thing is the amount of resources we have access to. So unless any kind of wall we hit will be the kind of wall that is, okay, we need X material to build more of this. And it's very, very super scarce, and we can only get it from harvesting the energy directly from the core of the sun or some shit like that. That's the kind of walls that science is likely to hit.
Well, one of the reasons that size is important is because there is the speed of light, and any sort of circuitry where things are moving around, they'll only be able to move around at the speed of light. So you want things to be closer together.
Light is pretty fast, though. I mean, like, okay, let's say I built a computer, and the computer is the size. Okay, and I break a calculation down into components. Who cares if, like, okay, so half the calculation happens over here, the other half happens over there, and then when they're done, they combine the two bits. What?
It's it's a process that's being used already.
Yeah, exactly. So
How does that necessarily make things faster, though? Because if your inputs started at the same place, right? And so,
okay, well, yeah, we're talking about the speed of the calculation rather than I guess the scale and complexity of the calculation. A relatively slow machine could very rapidly complete a very complex problem if it were large enough so that it could do massive multiprocessing. So if you took in a calculation, you broke it down into 1 million parts, and then each part took a minute to solve. That might seem like that's slow, but collectively they solved a really complicated problem in a minute.
Are you familiar with folding? But this for the benefit of Kimo, you know what folding is?
I might, but I'm not.
Well, it's basically a form of distributed supercomputer where you have multiple computers, and we're talking in some cases thousands around the world, all working on a single problem for doing protein folding. And the purpose of this is primarily in this case, to find cures for cancer. And basically what people do is they download a program, and it processes part of the chain that needs to be resolved. And likewise, thousands of other computers are also allocated part of the chain, and they're constantly at work using a small amount or a large amount of your processing power, depending on how much you want to dedicate it to. I believe you can use GPUs as well. And all of those computers working together can do more than one obviously can by itself. They're all working on the same problem. They're all working on the same problem at the same time at different speeds, but it means that the whole process is much faster.
All right, I kind of want to go back to a little bit. Let's get back to our guest because I feel like we just keep going off on tangents. So Jabril, I want to hear your take on some of this, and more specifically, actually, what is it about science, either the social or the hard, depending on whatever you want? What is it about science that interests you the most, and what is it that got you into it too?
All right. So your first part, there's a lot of information that was thrown out, and it's kind of hard to correlate it all. But you guys made some very good points. Yeah, there's that. And then science, I've always been interested in science since I was a kid, but like my whole educational experience was just not right. My teachers were, for the most part, pretty uninspiring. So it wasn't until I got older in which like I find myself doing nothing but like watching documentaries on a Saturday night all day long, in which I was like, you know what, I want to provide my perspective, and so I created the channel. But what I would say, what I find the most important for science, I believe, is the social science aspects of things, because I believe the social science is the first step to anything. For example, we're still like playing like patty cake with Russia right now, which is interesting. The Cold War has been over, but still we have like this weird gripe against Russia, even though like we have like Russian Americans and like U.S. citizens in America. In Russia. Man, yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, like I mean, I think the whole personally, and I think this is probably there's a similar sentiment among most of us. The social sciences are very different today, and I think that I like the way that you approach it, in that you're often just talking about just random things about that aren't necessarily hard science, but like why is this the case of why humans behave this way, and that's interesting, and that we don't humans are an unscientific element in studying science in general, in that we can't, the human error element is much higher, for example, in any social science when studying human behavior, because it's hard to replicate any of, it's much harder to replicate the scientific studies that you do on people versus, say, anything in the objective material world, like, that's in mathematics or physics or chemistry or whatever it is. Because people are always changing and looking at the dynamics between different peoples and different countries and how it all fits together.
Right.
It's all very complicated, but
Okay,
I
can
don't
you
know.
give an example of how social science would provide insight into something?
Jabril, you want to
Um,
field that?
yeah, sure, man. Let's take, for example, like Back to the Future, for example. Ever since Back to the Future was released, all of a sudden humans became very, very fascinated with building a hoverboard and that type of technology. You know, Star Wars, same thing. Ever since Star Wars came out, or I won't give all the credit to Star Wars. Let's say Star Trek and other sci-fi shows before that. But like, let's say Star Trek. Ever since then, people became very fascinated with like building a teleporter device, or Star Wars lightsabers in X, Y, and Z, right? And all that, I believe, is initially attributed to social science. You know, it's a social aspect that one person had this vision to create. He put it out there, and it influenced all aspects of the world. You know, not just socially, but researchers, they now are looking into ways that we can use plasmas to create plasma weapons and teleporters and things of that nature. And so that's why I believe that the very core of science is social science. I believe that all science starts with social science. I mean,
Can I
I'd
ask?
love.
Wait, when you say social science, though, it sounds to me like you're saying the public's interest in science. Is that what you mean? Because because when I hear social science, I'm thinking more of like like sociology.
Yeah.
Not exactly. Hold on, give me 1 second. I might be using this out of context. Let me do a little quick.
Yeah, because I think a lot of us, when we hear social science, our first thought is things like sociology and which are
Well, to be fair, cultural themes and cultural concepts are part of
Well, here we go.
the field of sociology.
Yeah, social science, it actually has 11 different branches. It has anthropology, communication studies, economics, education, geology, history, law, linguistics, political science, psychology, and sociology is the last one. So when I say social science, I mean like all the combined branches, really.
okay. All right.
So to understand, just to understand, then when we talk about social sciences, that includes the humanities.
I'm sorry, one more time?
The humanities, he's saying.
Yeah.
That includes the humanities in that? Like the human sciences?
I'm sure at some aspect, I'm not too familiar with humanities, but I'm sure there's some aspect that it does inspire. I'd have to look more into it to adequately
Yeah, because
answer your question.
generally, like they are sometimes conflated and sometimes they are separated.
Can you elaborate a little bit more, Alex? What do you mean specifically?
No, well, it depends. For example, humanities tends to be a more philosophical fields in terms of studying methods, studying epistemology, studying history.
Right.
And social sciences have a little more empirical element like sociology and in some sense psychology.
Can I ask you if you agree with that or not about social science influencing humanities?
Oh, I don't know. I'm quite ambivalent when it comes to the division between humanities and social sciences because I think it's really, it all influences the one another. So
Right.
I think your definition is much more. It's really a division between European academia and American academia more than anything.
And I
Well,
think. Sorry, go ahead, Kimoy. Go ahead.
When you talk about something like the hoverboard, I'm thinking of engineering and physics and those sort of harder sciences. But when you,
Well, yeah,
I don't
but
know, when you're talking about-
you're also thinking science fiction, though.
Yeah, he's also talking about the human element involved outside of just the logistics behind making it work. But like the fact that there's an idea in somebody's head, and then all of a sudden people are actually trying to take something that's in the science fiction world and build it into reality. And the psychological processes behind why we do that and how we do that. I'm assuming that's kind of where he's coming from. And sort of what seems to me the most interesting to you, Jabril, is science fiction as it relates to reality and real science. Is that right?
I'd agree with that partially.
Okay.
So so riffing on that theme, what do you think about the relationship between the tone of the science fiction and the way that it then influences the public. So I forget the author. There was a science fiction author who recently said that he thought that the science fiction writers were doing a disservice to the public or whatever because they were writing sort of darker science fiction. Whereas the science fiction that was attributed to, you know, inspiring people to, I don't know, build rocket ships to the moon, their science fiction was more optimistic. And so does that key into things? Like, and maybe that goes into, you know, the fear of science. So, you know, if the people, and obviously, you know, whatever becomes popular in media, it's not like the artists create that. There's the audience decides what they want to listen to a certain extent. Like, there's no one stopped writing the optimistic stuff. It's just people stopped buying it. So anyway.
Yeah, man. To answer your question, I believe that, you know, when stuff like that happens, I believe that it's natural and it happened for a reason. You know, behind this novel or behind this film, whatever it is that may depict a certain branch of science in a negative way, that is a legit concern to be thinking about. You know, and there's perhaps a alternative in which, like, no one ever explores that idea, and I don't know, I'm just all speculating here, but at the fact that we never explore that negative aspect comes to fruition, you know, because we're focusing on, like, all the positive things, we ignore the negative, and the negative comes to light, you know.
Well, there's a relationship between science fiction and, well, science fact, I guess. The two, well, there's a lot of crosstalk between the two. Yeah. There are very often, for example, Star Trek is a good example of this. They have consultants who inform them just how far they can push the science fiction side of things by giving them scientific facts. And a lot of inspiration that is drawn from science fiction in the scientific community might be just, you know, it might be some kid, like you say, who saw Star Wars growing up and thinks, I want to make myself a fucking laser sword. But that doesn't necessarily mean that thought originated, for example, with Star Wars or even with Lucas. That could have been something that he saw somewhere else and maybe was based on something somebody was putting forward in a scientific journal somewhere. There's a great deal of crosstalk between them. But what you're basically saying is that it's all about ideas and the sharing of ideas and the embracing of ideas. And what Will's touching on now with this concept of maybe being turned off by ideas, I think that depends on who you ask, isn't that? Because I saw, for example, after what could arguably be called a horror movie, Terminator, there was a massive interest in robots for years after that. We had, like, Robot Wars here in America, or whatever it was called in Europe. We had a slew of different TV shows that were focused on robots. There were kids' cartoons and all kinds of stuff. So, okay, arguably that was also on the back of things like Transformers and what have you as well. But all of these things are linked in together. What people are thinking about culturally does inform what they think about on a scientific level. They're thinking about what is possible, what if.
Yeah, well, I mean, the entire speculation thing with science, I mean, like, if we're looking at science fiction and we're looking at what if, you know, there's so many different, like you said, the relationship between the science fiction and science fact is a strange one, because, like, going back though to sort of what Vril said earlier, he was saying that about the social sciences, and he was saying that, you know, all science starts with social science, and I think, speaking to that point, I think I can kind of agree with that in the sense that because humans are the ones doing the science, and the social sciences to me is more like the sciences that are, you know, focused on things to do with humans. That would be the first. I can understand that as, like, being the base of science, because, you know, we have to study it from the perspective as humans. Well, but for the scientific method, I think it would be, for me, the base of science.
I think that the base of science is just inquiry.
I was going to say, if you look at the history of science, you'll see that the first humans tended to always look very much away from human behavior and more towards like the sky, for example, like the Egyptians with the stars, and the Greeks were more were interested in other things. I mean, sociology only really came about in the 18th century.
Well, he's not talking about sociology though. I mean, really.
No, I know. Sure, no. I get his point, but I'm simply saying the obviously inquiry, I would say, is the beginning of scientific. I agree with Wayne.
Right,
In terms of saying the first humans. I mean, like the sort of scientific thingy, not thingy, but I mean, sort of inquiry was mostly done to sort of things far away, like the stars, for example. In nature.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. In my opinion, first of all, because we have the subject of history since the 5th century BC with Herodotus and Thucydides, and you have all those social sciences, humanities, whatever you call them, really, really early, and you had medicine with Hippocrates and all those Galen and all those other philosophers.
Also, the looking at the stars thing was mostly a fascination with weather.
But we can go further back than that by looking at other social apes. We can look at chimpanzees, for example, who have started to use very rudimentary tools. For example, they pare the bark off a twig or a branch, insert it into a termite hole. The termites then latch onto the intruder. They pull it out of the hole and they eat the termites.
Sure,
and that's a scientific discovery.
Yes, but there is something else that I think is more fascinating, and it's in this conversation. There is this question of when did we become actually human in the evolutionary scale, and an answer to that was something that I was taught when I was in the pre-graduate studies. It was this fossil of a Homo erectus from the Caucasus, and that fossil had no teeth. It was an elderly woman. It survived with no teeth for many years. It was treated, it was taken care of, and it wasn't Homo sapiens.
So it's you're pointing to the fact that there was obviously a very strong social community going on for that to have been the case.
There was a notion of helping and treating the weak.
Of course.
In a society, which is something that doesn't necessarily is a good. Well, we can argue if that is a good, survival strategy or not. But it is probably.
Well, they're not the weak. They're basically the memory of. In those days, they didn't have books.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, I know that.
They were the memory of the tribe.
You're protecting an asset.
But then we imply that it had a tribe, and
they weren't just the weak. They had value.
But then we had, for example, Homo neanderthalensis who buried their dead. Why is that? So we have this.
Sure, but I mean, Eskimos when they get a baby that they can't feed, they stuff its mouth with snow, and they put it out in the snow to die.
Yes, that is undeniable.
I'm just saying that when you're in a survival situation like that, you have to be utilitarian. So you're not keeping anything alive that isn't providing you value.
But the point is moot anyways, because these traits aren't unique to humans. The trait of protecting other members of your family, that's something that we share with other social animals. So
I mean, Neanderthals ate other Neanderthals. We have the evidence that there were cases of cannibalism.
Human beings.
Yes, I know. So it varies, but the point is that there were traits that are not present generally in other animals, where they treat the weak, where they try to establish social norms, and that was
we're rudimentary forms of not only language but communication that was independent, like of just instinct and stuff like that.
So the question is, scientifically we can study those processes, study behavior, but the question is, when does it start being human, and when does it stop being pre-human?
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean by human?
That's a good question. That's a good question, and I think the social sciences have the main objective of defining what is human, because there are human traits in different non-Homo sapiens species. So the question is, what is human, and what is what we define as human? And that, I think, is a fascinating discussion in the social sciences.
Well, that's just a definition question. Like, that's just how should we define this word? And
Yeah,
beyond
of
that, I
course.
don't know if it has much. I don't know that it's all that profound beyond. I don't find those kind of
No.
questions profound.
But beyond the genetic, I don't think it matters. I mean, we are the result of millennia of social shaping. How we came to be is just one path that we might have took. We
But
just
then-
happened to take this one.
It does affect things like human rights and human dignity and other aspects of social organizations today. You can just touch upon that.
It informs them, but again, I mean, this isn't the only potential outcome for the species. You look at
Oh, naturally.
different cultures to our own when it comes to human rights. We look at cultures where, for example, they have no concept of deities. They found one, I forget where it was now, but they found a culture that had literally no concept of God or anything somewhere in Africa, which is where they find most of these latent undiscovered tribes.
Sure.
But they had no understanding of what God was. They had evolved very rudimentary tool use. Were living in very rudimentary shelters.
God is
And-
required for civilization. When
and-
it's confirmed it.
And were no,
Just messing with that.
they were they were doing all right, but they were also incredibly satisfied and happy with themselves apparently, which I find very strange. They
So
were.
you need God to be unhappy enough to.
Well, no, I think you need to just get rid of things. Maybe we need to devolve scientifically a little bit to be happy.
Even evolve, I am definitely keeping my teeth up.
Yeah. Look, I'm with you, Will. I'm not giving up my fucking scientific goods or my luxuries or my computer.
Did we have a comment from the newly joined Frenchman?
He's been lurking for 30 minutes, dude.
I know, but newly spoken. Go ahead, Magic.
He says not French, he's Quebecois. How dare you, Eric?
Let him speak.
Okay, so we certainly have a shift, a gravitational
Whose idea was it to let him speak?
towards less being less animalistic and more mundane, I guess, because of technology. So that would be something to look forward, because the human being try to diverge more and more that what is counterpart before was because of technology and also social shaping.
Well, I mean, like, getting back to Jabril real quick. What is it? What's the most interesting point you can raise out of this the social sciences discussion, and what for you is the most interesting aspect of social science?
Man, I feel like I keep failing on answering this question.
Dude, by the way, too late for this, but I certainly vote for the top 3 on Vegas. That's the place to be. No?
Yeah, Magic.
This is the man.
Yeah, he's obsessed with Vegas.
Hey, more power to you.
Very briefly, tell us about your hookers in Vegas.
Magic, go ahead.
I'm just kidding, man.
Yeah, I wasn't. If you like Vegas, man, I have nothing against you. I was just pointing my point of view on Vegas, but I'm sure it's a lovely place if you know how to work it right.
No,
Man.
no, dude. Okay, no one is offended by anything.
Yeah, we don't get offended.
We laugh at each other when we do get offended. We're like,
Even
"Oh,
as you saw
busted."
earlier, even when we get really mad at each other, we still don't care. So.
I'm
you guys are
offended
awesome.
by people being offended.
Yeah.
I like
Everybody
that. I actually like
except
that.
for Guinness, he'll spurg out sometimes, and we won't see him for days on end.
Yeah.
Come on, Guinness. Come on, Guinness.
It's true, man. I have a problem.
No, but okay.
Okay.
So the name of the show
This is
Triggered
definitely
and,
not a support group for people with that problem.
No, it's not. It is a group for laughing at people that have that problem. Yep.
I just want to mention one of my pet peeves that when it comes to not science, but when people talking about science, and that is when they conflate reality and science as sort of like the same thing. So basically, I think the reason this happens is because you could take anything and use like some sort of scientific, do some sort of scientific study of it, right? And so because of that, they'll call something science. And I mean, for example, before humans really existed, you had stars forming and things like that. That in and of itself, I would say, is just reality, but it doesn't become science until someone actually starts to study it. And I don't know, does anyone understand what I'm saying? I mean, does anyone else, does that bother anyone else when that happens?
Didn't come into the picture before humans. That's what you're saying. It was there, but the term and all the pronoun and all that shit comes from human. Yeah.
Well, yeah, science is a philosophical concept, and reality is reality.
Science can be described as an action.
It's a methodology, I'd say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, because it's a methodology, I mean, they are, in a sense, technically right, and the doing of the science is the science. But
no,
but
I'm claiming. No, wait. I'm claiming the actual doing of the science is the science, whereas other people will say that anything that could be scientifically inquired about or scientifically studied somehow becomes science. Whereas I think that's a complete abuse of the word, and I don't know, it just kind of annoys me.
No, that's just downright stupid. That doesn't bug me as much as, and I think sadly it was creationists that coined this term, and it's actually a very useful term. It's scientism. And scientism, I think, is something you could probably best apply to a certain brand of atheist who replace whatever theology they've broken free from with a whole new theology, which is devoted to sucking up to prominent scientific figures. That angers me. That really, really irritates me when I see it.
I think that goes back to the whole, we kind of mentioned this towards early in the beginning, that people, like, there's a big gap between what is actually being said in the science and what is being understood by the people, the general layman of the science.
Because it's being filtered through those people that we mentioned that were doing the actual reporting of science rather than the actual
the scientists, when they talk about it, they describe it scientifically, and so everything has qualifiers, right? They don't make unqualified statements. They don't say this is true. They say, I did these experiments, I got these results, I was unable to show that this was not untrue, that there was a flaw with this theory, and therefore I am concluding that this is most probably the correct, I mean, there's like this whole process. And that's not to say that whatever you said is not 100% correct. It's just the way in which things are rephrased to sound more colloquial. Colloquial, and it's not, but it loses sort of all the qualifiers from the original, which are important. So don't escape them for no reason.
And it's often reported through the lens of an agenda, and that's a whole different problem.
Science is reported by God.
All right. Well, let's. How much time you got left, Jabril, for us?
I could probably do like another half hour.
All right, cool. So,
Can I ask a question? Because I had that question when you said that Jibril was very, very interested in the social sciences. So I was wondering, and I opened that question to the panel. If there was indeed an AI that was the technological singularity, and would be able to replicate itself, and had the ability to write down human history, what do you think will that history look like? And what tone will it have?
It would look like a system log file. It would just be a list of error reports.
Error.
No, it would just be like this day, this hour, this second, this microsecond, this thing happened.
Oh, yeah.
No one cares about.
Are you talking about human history from the point of its inception, or dating further back?
Good question. I guess further back better.
Well, then what you're going to get?
Trying to explain the history of its creators.
You're going to get a series of you're basically going to have the internet stored somewhere, And
You're gonna have to
then
run.
You can have a
That's
backup
very-
of Wikipedia.
That's terribly
yeah,
bleak.
and then after that point, it's going to log everything using its clones of itself or its extended awareness, if you like.
Endless syslogs.
Yeah, it's just going to be a shit. We're going to have to bury this data somewhere inside that black hole I mentioned. That's also going to be providing all the power. They're going to have a storage module inside a black hole to hold all the
It'll
data.
automatically forget information after a certain amount of time.
No, just an
Well, my answer-
infinitely large storage system contained
my
within a
answer to the
singularity.
question is my answer to the question is I guess it really depends the purpose of the the purpose that it's storing the history for, I guess. But other than that, I don't see it being particularly different than our account of history. That's my opinion.
Yeah, to branch off him, I think it's really the purpose of the program, right? I mean, your question, it requires a lot of assumption on my part. Has this AI already gone rogue, you know?
Yeah, I assume that the AI was completely independent,
For example,
being intellect that was able to, think for itself.
Well,
I mean, one thing to consider is that a lot of people are looking at history to sort of justify their feelings about the present.
Mm-hmm.
And if this, I mean, there's a chance that this robot doesn't necessarily need to do that.
Actually,
So
the problem of history is that it's almost completely that. So it always comes from the present and to explain the present and has present.
Right,
brains.
but that's because we're social creatures and we're trying to justify things to each other.
Exactly.
So the AI,
If there's a singular AI, it doesn't have to judge. It's just its own personal memory.
it's just going to be a sanitized series of lists and data put forward as as if you like as evidence. Here is some stuff that happened. Here is the evidence to suggest it might be true. That's it.
So you think
That's
you think that will be an objective history?
No, because it won't have experienced it for itself.
Well, there are some things about history that we're not going to be able to know, or we can't really know all that well.
See,
We
you
have to
guys are
guess.
assuming that the robot is not going to have a time machine. And it's learned from the Terminator. Skynet will absolutely have a time machine. We'll just go back in time, and it'll be one of it'll just be hanging out, chilling with the cavemen. Hello, human.
Okay, everything we know about time travel suggests that the only time travel that might be possible backwards is after the point at which a machine is made, and only to that point.
Yeah, but that's not how
So
the
it won't be able to go back far enough.
Like for example, here's another thing: is that if it was me, or if the robot was similar to me, it would probably focus more on just like all of the technological breakthroughs rather than say all of the wars that are going on. But all the wars are very important.
What is it going to care about ancient humans with their stone?
That's a fascinating. I think Kimoi's
Okay,
answer is very fascinating because that will make that's a very human way to see history.
Well, here's the deal, right? The AI, when it's all said and done, all it is a program. So there has to be some, if not individual, a team of programmers that implemented this algorithm within that AI. So if it ever gets to the point where AI goes rogue on us, they would have their justification as to why they did that. Computationally, it made sense why to get rid of humans. So with that, I believe there will be no reason to lie about the history of humans unless, of course, that was within their algorithm, Which, you know what, it's such a complicated thing because as I say that, I say no, that's incorrect, because what if they come across another species in which it's optimal for them to lie about the history that they know about humans?
Well, also, I'm talking about a pure AI. It could well have human level or well beyond human level, consciousness. In which case, have all the foibles of, being.
The part I don't yet is why would we create something that is not task oriented?
I agree.
That's the part I don't get.
Well, we kind of discussed that earlier. That's my kind of argument for this, is that the big AI scare. I think that we would have to screw up in order for that to happen.
I'm just like the fucking hair on the soup then, yeah?
No, but I mean, I agree with you. I think there really isn't a reason to make an AI.
Certainly not a self-governing one that makes moralistic judgments.
Well, you don't want it to have a personality or a will.
No.
So
And
there's
if
one.
it doesn't have a personality or a will, it's
Oh,
not
it would
really an
be
AI.
fucking awesome, like a robotic judge.
Yeah.
Totally impartial, you know?
Assuming you could mechanize your legal system to that extent, it would still be an expert system. It wouldn't necessarily have to have any sense of self.
Yeah, sure, but you have the facial recognition shit, and
Yeah, but you'd still have to have human juries, though. I don't think robots could be
Human
considered
juries
peers.
made up of robots.
No, you couldn't have
EA chorus.
robotic peers unless you passed a law stating that robots were human.
Note to self.
You will be judged by your
Yeah,
peers.
don't
You're already a
forget-
robot.
Congress
basically.
immediately.
Don't forget that one, Will. If you're gonna take over the world with your robot army, they must first pass the robot rights law.
Exactly.
So there's one question that I think I wanted to get to before we close up here. So sort of I don't know if this is the right word or the term for it, but I think transhumanism. So the idea that humans will sort of, this is along the AI lines, but more to the idea of machines integrating into humans, and more specifically, if let's say humans eventually become augmented en masse. And let's say that goes like to a ridiculous degree to the point where we become more machine than person. Is that still human evolution?
How do
What
you
is-
define evolution?
Well, I mean, based on like.
If you're talking about selective breeding, then no, it's not.
Well, evolution came before sexual selection.
Well, yeah, but that's what we understand by from the point of view of an organism. But
Well,
I think
mutation
there's definitely an argument.
No. Mutation is included in the concept.
Yeah, of course. But there's definitely an argument that there's a form of evolution that can be applied to scientific discovery. It's obviously not the same usage of the word evolution is the important thing to remember.
I mean, it's certainly
It's not the same process.
It's a progress. It's not like you take a bunch of scientific theories and let them have sex with each other,
No.
and then you're like, oh yeah, you are weak, you will die, you are strong, you will have.
But I think this is something that we've already obviously started to see. I mean, I think that was it as far back as the early 90s. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but there was an interface with a pair of spectacles which you put on, which they connected to a blind person's optic nerve. And they were able to see very vague kind of outlines of what was in the room.
I mean, cybernetics is actually making enormous strides. They've pretty much reverse engineered most of the neural signals outside the brain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we've had cochlear implants for quite some time, which is a microphone or wired into your brain. And then they've got, as Wayne was pointing out, they basically were able to wire up a webcam to someone's face, and I mean, not necessarily, but I mean, there's a wire going in their head, and they were able to see through the webcam, and obviously there's enormous strides being made with prosthetics, where nerve signals or they put some sensors on a nerve bundle, and when it fires, that goes through a little microcontroller that interprets that, and then it sends the correct signals to a stimulator that will stimulate nerve signals on the other side. That's basically bypassing a nerve.
See, my question is, if you replace all of your senses, or all of the organs which actually control those senses, with artificial implants, how will you know that what you're perceiving is real?
Well, Wayne, you're just asking.
Are you sure that's the case already, Will? I mean, not Will, Wayne.
Yeah.
More certain than if I was seeing the world through a virtual lens that could be programmed or intercepted.
Because someone could hack it, you mean?
Yeah. Someone could broadcast a signal that interrupts with your visual implant.
Best pornography ever.
True.
VR porn, guys.
How will you know when you're not plugged into the
That's a
matrix?
social science. That's an interesting social science.
Yeah, VR porn, dude. At what point? What if fucking people just don't need to have sex anymore because they have like good enough porn?
Well, it's going to be a lot fewer
That's
people.
pretty much what's happening.
Full body sex suits.
Doesn't that just define Japan to a T?
I mean, exactly. I mean, Japan, they don't even fucking breed anymore. They just watch porn all day.
Weird porn.
And I mean, and then also they're already talking about breeding centers, which we had a long conversation about.
Wait, they're talking about breeding centers?
Oh yeah, they want to have artificial wombs.
If you have a fetish for Asian girls, there are a whole host of them
is that
going
something,
unsatisfied right now.
Lenny? Is that something that that's something that you guys were just talking about, or are you talking about like a news article that happened?
Well, I mean, there were scientists saying that in the future we'll have birding centers, which will include eugenics, aka genetic engineering, to get the qualities you want out of the babies. I don't know. That's something they were suggesting for the
just
future.
something some scientists are speculating about.
No, actually, not at all. We're actually saying that
Is grave.
they're improving the technology. That's what they were saying.
Look,
They're
there's no
improving the
doubt
technology? What do you mean?
Improving.
Oh,
Improving.
okay.
having
Like they're actively working towards it?
Yep.
sufficient enough to
And who's
just
funding them?
work up all day. I mean, it's not related to technology. Those fucker has manga for far back, you know.
Lenny, who's funding it?
Well, I don't know. You want me to add? You want me
I mean,
to
are we
tell
just
you?
talking about a scientist that speculated about something, or are we talking about someone actually actively funding something?
There is active, no, I mean, Kimoy, there is active funding into
Artificial wombs,
Yeah, our ex-uteral birth.
genetic engineering.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not some speculation. I mean, people want this, or at least scientists are trying to get further with this. So.
Hey, it could be useful if you
Human
want
beings
to
have been,
like, the human
human
race
beings-
into another planet and shit.
Human beings have already been cloned several times. They don't bring them to term. They're cloned in the embryonic stage.
Yeah,
and
like-
then the embryos are terminated. But they have already proven that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, is there anything anybody else wants to bring up before we close off the show? Anything?
Thousands of
touch
things, but go ahead and close up.
All right. Well, Jabril,
I mean-
final thoughts.
You guys are all wonderful people. I thank you for having me come and shoot the shit with you guys. It's been fun. Thank you guys.
All right. Awesome, man. And we've had we enjoyed having you.
We apologize for being weird. We're weird.
Yeah.
He's obviously gained a false impression of us. I don't know what that's all about.
No, I think if anything, this was a perfect picture of exactly how our group operates. So,
You guys
Anyway.
are awesome, man. You guys are awesome.
thanks, man, and we've appreciated having you on. And is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up real quick before we close up the show?
I am totally not designing killer robots. No one needs to check the shed. There's nothing in it.
Okay, here's my last statement. Or actually, rather, it's a question for you all. All right.
Okay.
There are 30 wolves in the forest, 28 foxes. How many didn't?
None of them didn't do nothing.
I don't understand.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm Belgian.
The answer's 3.
Wrong.
You're wrong.
Listen, guys. There are 30 wolves in the forest, 28 foxes. How many didn't?
Oh, so we're gonna take like the letters from wolf and the letters from foxes, and we're gonna spell didn't.
I'm pretty sure the answer's 0, right?
All
Eight.
of them except for the 30 and
8
18.
is the correct answer.
Wrong.
I'm so fucking confused right now.
How many
Guys.
did it?
58
what?
because they all made it.
No, 8. They 8.
No.
So it's 10 of them.
Oh,
I'm confused.
I get it.
Maybe it's because
Good
I'm
one
watching
right
Big
there.
Fish.
That was pretty
Oh,
good.
man.
All right. Thanks for being here, dude. It's been awesome.
Lottie riddles.
Thanks for having me, guys. You guys are awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Salutations.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.